Good morning, everyone. Greetings from the nation's capital, and thank you for joining us early on a Monday morning for another great FIU and DC Talent Lab Impact Series event. This is Getting America Excited About Science, featuring FIU alumni, interns, and fellows at NASA. For those of you who might be new to interacting with FIU in Washington, D.C., we are part of FIU's Governmental Relations Office, focusing on the federal side of things and ensuring support for FIU research priorities and student access programs through partnerships with our congressional offices and federal agencies. And we also host the Talent Lab, which is what you're experiencing today. These are all of our programs for students and alumni to assist with internship and career success in Washington, D.C. I'm excited to announce that this morning, the applications just went live for our Hamilton Scholars DC semester program. So undergraduate students who are seeking DC internships for the spring, in person or virtual, because there will be some of both, can visit hamilton.fiu.edu to review more about that program and to apply if it is of interest to you. We also have a few other upcoming events this week that I want to make sure you know about. One thing that we do in our talent lab is 3-day fly-in seminars with various campus partners, and those are taking place virtually this semester. We're doing one with our Black Student Union starting Wednesday, and while there are 3 days of programming for the students in that group, one session is open to the entire university community on executive leadership, and it features the president and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, a senior vice president at the American Association of University Women, and a vice president from the Heritage Foundation. On top of that list of amazing women already is our moderator for that, our alumna, chief of staff to Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, Charlene Stanberry. I'm about to paste some of these links into the chat, if I can find the chat and get it set to everyone. And so you can RSVP for those or go to hamilton.fiu.edu for our semester program. We also have an information session this Friday for a great internship program with our nonprofit partner, the Partnership for Public Service. If you're interested in government service, which you might be if NASA drew your attention, the Partnership for Public Service is a nonprofit which works to directly with federal government agencies to improve their hiring, leadership development, et cetera. We have 3 FIU interns with them right now, and you'll meet the recruiter for this program and our current interns on Friday at our public service internship program info session. So we hope to see you at either or both of these things. I pasted the link into the chat. It is my pleasure to introduce today's esteemed guest and moderator. Bettina Inclán is the Associate Administrator for Communications at NASA. She came to NASA with over 15 years of experience as a communications specialist and strategist, building winning coalitions and crafting messages and crisis communication in the political, commercial, and nonprofit spheres. She has worked with major technology firms and nonprofit organizations, has held senior roles within government leaders at the federal, state, and local levels, including governors and within the U.S. House of Representatives. At NASA, she directs internal and external communications for the agency and serves as senior advisor to the administrator and other executive leaders. She's responsible for managing an agency-wide staff of more than 100 that implements all aspects of communications at the agency. Previous to NASA, she served as president and founder of Meta Strategies, a public affairs and communications consulting firm with organizations like Right Now, a women's empowerment nonprofit focused on developing female leaders, has held senior roles with Governor Rick Scott of Florida, previously Governor of Florida, and Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan, and was named Women to Watch by Running Start, an organization that inspires girls to run for public office. I should mention that in addition to 3 interns that Bettina is hosting right now at NASA, we have also had 2 interns intern for Running Start, a fantastic organization. She graduated from our Florida International University, where I was told by my boss, I have to mention, she was also the 2nd ever intern at FIU in Washington, D.C. She and her husband live in Alexandria, Virginia, with their 2 young sons. And we're looking forward to this conversation with Bettina, which will be moderated by FIU's own Dr. Mireya, who's currently serving as FIU's director of the Exploration and Science Communications Initiative. So no better person to lead this discussion. In addition to her role with FIU, Dr. Mayor is a world-renowned primatologist and award-winning TV host. She's a former NFL cheerleader, daughter of Cuban immigrants, and a mother of 6 who is not your typical scientist. She's known for exploring the most remote regions of the earth in search of elusive, rare, and little-known animals. Those explorations have led to several scientific discoveries, most notably her co-discovery in Madagascar of the world's smallest primate, a brand new species to science. She is a National Science Foundation Fellow, Fulbright Scholar, National Geographic Explorer, and a Emmy Award nominated wildlife correspondent for the National Geographic Channel. She was recently named one of Stony Brook University's top 40 under 40, which recognizes bright, innovative, and entrepreneurial spirited young graduates who have used their degree to pursue their passion. Her memoir, I should say, Pink Boots and a Machete, is available in bookstores worldwide, and we've had the pleasure of giving copies of that book to some previous FIU and DC flying participants. Normally, it's a slog to get through two biographies, but those were amazing biographies to read. Truly passionate and inspiring FIU-affiliated leaders, and I'm glad to have them here today. We'll also hear from the end from some interns and fellows at NASA. We're glad to have Marisol Roman Guerrera and Ricardo Riva Nadera and their mentor, Professor Elias Alwan, participating in the NASA's fellow program, and 3 interns, Alex Martinez Rivera, Nicholas Gonzalez, and Lazaro Bach, working as interns. We were on the topic of government comms, so I had to share one more piece of good news, and then we'll get started. That another FIU alumna of ours has ascended to a high-level government communications position. FIU alumna Nilda Pedrosa was recently named Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, which is in charge of communications at the State Department. So more amazing FIU alumni leading government communications. So I invite you all to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know why you're here, who you are, and we also welcome you to ask questions in the chat at any time. Mireya will be keeping track of those questions in the chat, and we'll call on you to ask them via video at an appropriate time. I am going to get out of the way and turn it over to our amazing moderator and panelist.
Thank you so much, Eric, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been super excited about this because I am very passionate about science communication, and I read Bettina's bio, and I can't wait to ask her some questions. So good morning, Bettina. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. So thank you so much for having me.
So let me ask you, as you may have noticed from Eric's bio of me, I have a very unusual route into this field. I'd love to hear yours. Tell us about your current role and your journey to NASA as an FIU alumni.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, my fancy title is Associate Administrator for the Office of Communications at NASA, making me part of the senior leadership at the agency. But and what I do is I'm the Communications Director for the agency, and I've had it for about, in December it'll be 2 years. The best job I've ever had with the best team I've ever worked with. It is a pleasure to do this. Like today is technically a day off, but at NASA we have a saying, science never sleeps. Yeah. So, but how I got here, in many ways, my journey in communications and political, in this, you know, it is a government role, and in government started with FIU. Eric correctly mentioned, right after I graduated from FIU, literally the day after I walked on the stage, my mom and my brother filled a car with any belongings I could fit, and I moved to DC to start an internship. And it started a career that I don't think I could have done it without it. So it was, I started an FIU's internship office and did that for a few months. And then I got a job with Congressman Lincoln Diaz-Balart, who is now retired. And from there, just continued doing a combination of policy and communications. And in Lincoln's office, it really, life is all about, it's part preparation and part luck, right? Like I had a great career. I mean, a great education at FIU that really prepared me. I had this great opportunity, a job in the congressman's office. But then one day, both the the communications directors, press secretaries in both the district office and the DC office both went on maternity leave at the same time. And they're like, well, we need someone to help us with comms. Bettina, you're doing it. And I'm like, great. And it really opened a whole bunch of doors, and it just continued from there. And Eric kept on talking about some of the things I've done in my career. And about, I guess, almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, after living in Michigan, my husband and I, we moved to DC. He was working in administration, and I got a call, would you like to come work in administration? And I said, yeah, it'd be great. Like, would you be interested in working at NASA? And I looked at my phone to make sure it was a prank phone call. And I was like, of course, you know, it was a dream come true. Like many kids in Florida, as a kid, I used to go up to Cape Canaveral and watch the shuttle launch. I remember one particular year, like we went with my middle school, and my dad loves science. I'm the daughter of a Cuban exile and a Mexican immigrant. And my dad in Mexico was a science teacher, so always had that love of science. We had stacks of National Geographic all over the house at all times that I used to look at it all the time. So I already loved science. So now being at NASA, you know, wanting to go to space camp as a kid, that was one of my dreams. So it was a great opportunity that I jumped on, and I was lucky enough to be able to land this job and really lead a great team to do really incredible stuff at NASA.
That's fantastic. And you hit on a couple of points that really resonate with me, because I do believe that the harder you work, the luckier you get. But it's also about jumping on those opportunities and not being afraid to really sort of hold on to that moment and go. And as someone who grew up in Florida, my favorite field trip of all time was going to NASA. So yeah. I know exactly how you feel. Yeah. So let me ask you, how do you actually, let me ask you first, why is it important to excite the American public about science? And how does engaging them about NASA's work help to achieve that goal?
Yeah, well, a few things. Well, first, like space, science, exploration. It's not just about scientific, engineering, or technological triumphs. It's really, we teach people to make the impossible possible. We teach people how to be problem solvers. And more than anything, we teach the capacity of greatness for our human species. So when we achieve these incredible things in science and exploration and technology, we're showing people what we as a human species, as humans, we can do, and we also improve the human condition. One of the things I love most about NASA is talking about what we say spin-off technology, which is the things that we've invented that improved human life. And it's everything from sneakers to medical supplies, like for your heart, to like vaccines, to better baby formula. Like, there is nothing that science through NASA hasn't touched. So talking to people that this is something that could really improve the life. And more than anything, you know, at FIU, I graduated from political science with a certificate in Latin American studies. So I've always really loved international relations. But the reality is, we as a country in America, we're not graduating enough students in STEM, where there's not enough people that are, or STEAM, you want to say, like, because communications adds a lot of that art to it, right? But we're not doing enough. So we need to do more to inspire people. We need to do more to get them excited and see what's possible, that they too can have a role in this world, to get more people excited. So that's what I love about NASA, that so much of what we do is inspiring people of what they can do, and hoping they see that they too can have some role in the world of science and STEM education.
And the fact is that in our everyday lives, it's improved because of science. Exactly. A lot of people don't realize that. But I'm curious, because in an era right now where so many have begun to distrust science, what are the most effective ways, do you think, to communicate science to the public?
I think we just keep on talking about it. You talk about our everyday lives, like what we're doing right now, using our cell phones. selfie cameras. Every selfie you take is because of NASA. We developed it through our Mars technology. But I think it's just talking about it. It's just educating people about it. And I would say that most people do believe in science. I think there's, of course, different opinions on data. There's so much data out there. But I do think that most people believe in science. I'm very lucky that I work at NASA, which is such a respected brand around the world. And the support for NASA has never been higher. So I would say, because of that, I would say most people do believe in science. They agree with what it is. I think there's a lot of different opinions to interpreting data, but what we do at NASA is we share that data openly and freely and allow people to interpret it. And there's a lot of interpretations of data, but we have scientists to help us understand that information. And then all we can do is talk more about it and explain it more, and hopefully people will understand.
And you bring up an excellent point as to why the science communication effectively is so vital. It's so important because you can overwhelm people with information and data, but the way that you present it so that they can understand it, relate to it, and as you said, be inspired by it is really the key to engaging the public. So let me ask you, how do you use effective communication techniques to overcoming the challenges of explaining complex technical topics to a general audience?
Well, number one, we make it fun, right? That is the number one thing, but it goes back to basic comms. It's knowing your audience. So depending on the audience is how we communicate the information. So sometimes, like right now, we have the IAC, which is the International Astronautical Conference. So it's a conference more of scientists and experts. So that information is a little bit more what other people will call heavy, right? It's very focused on some information. At the same time, even when we have that, if you go on our NASA Twitter account right now, we're talking about it, we're sharing it, and then we're sharing it in tidbits for the general public to get them interested. And then we have a lot of great resources at NASA to try to simplify some information, not to dumb it down, but just to put it into bite-sized pieces so people can consume it at their pace. So if you want more, there's plenty of stuff to get more. If you want little by little 101s, we have that as well. So I think it's knowing your audience, making it fun, making it approachable. And something you said in the beginning, or someone said about you, was like that you're not your typical scientist, right? So at NASA, we try to find those people as well. We try to find people that don't always fit into a mold of what is a scientist and show those people. And a big part is trying to get people to relate to people, to see themselves in it. So that might be diversity of geography, that might be a diversity of people look, that might be a diversity of education, like lots of different types of things that people might be interested, be it astrobiology or aerospace or just airplanes. Like, it is just showing different parts and getting people excited.
Are you looking for a former NFL cheerleader by any chance, or has someone
always
good?
We'll talk after this. We'll get something together.
So it's funny because I went into science as an academic and a researcher, and I was very focused on that. In my particular area, I was looking at biodiversity and conservation. And it became very apparent to me that all of that data would languish in files if we didn't communicate it. And the way to do that, of course, is to excite people about it. And as you say, to inspire them. I think there's a lot to be said for inspiring people to care. It may not be something that they want to do for the rest of their lives, but if we can just get them to care and relate to it. And I was fortunate enough, as you say, I got lucky in that National Geographic approached me to start telling these stories and the plight of these different animals and places and cultures that we were losing around the world. And it became so apparent that it was through strong visuals and storytelling and things that are really accessible and relatable that you can get basically anyone from their living room to engage and suddenly be on those journeys with you and to understand these things and to really care. Our professor of mine once said, you can't love something if you don't know it. So as you say, it's not the dumbing down of information, It's about you knowing who your audience is and speaking to them in a way that they can understand and relate to it.
Yeah, I would say right now we're really looking at opportunity with COVID impacting so many people's lives. We launched a thing called NASA at Home, which is a way of how to get people, be it if you're a parent with kids at home like me, or someone that has now a lot of free time, or whatever your scenario is, having that information so people can consume it. And we saw an increase in our website. We saw an increase on social media. We're also very lucky of how we've approached social media. We have one of the top Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts in the world. So we really use those platforms to directly connect with people, not only in the United States, but around the world.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Let me ask you, speaking of exciting things that I'm sure is all over Twitter. So the SpaceX Crew 1 launch is currently scheduled for October 23rd, which is right around the corner. What is the significance of that event for NASA, and what is the role of the communications team in such an event?
Yeah, so on Saturday, we announced that launch is going to move over a little bit. It's now going to be the beginning of November, beginning mid-November. We're looking at a few things going on, but to your main question on why, and this is an incredible moment in time. At NASA, in May, we launched the Demo 2 launch, the Demonstration 2 with SpaceX. And this Crew 1 launch is a follow-up to that. So in May, we launched for the first time in almost a decade, American astronauts from American soil with an American rocket. The space shuttle was canceled about 10 years ago. And from then, we've been relying on other countries. We've been relying on Russia to get up to the International Space Station. So we launched this effort called Commercial Crew, which is how do we get American companies to do space differently? Instead of everything being owned by the government, doing a partnership with private entities to create space transportation with the goal of making space available to everyone. That one day you'll have private astronauts. You could go up to space one day, as a private astronaut. Yeah, me too. Well, that is the ultimate goal, for NASA to be a customer of many, going up to the International Space Station and building or continuing to build a commercial sector in what we call low Earth orbit, LEO, which is orbiting the Earth. So that was the goal. So finally, after years and years of working, we worked with two companies, SpaceX and Boeing. SpaceX launched in May, and they launched what we call Demo 2 or Demonstration 2. And it was a successful, almost perfect launch up to the space station and back. They were there for a few weeks. And with the goal of it is just testing everything out. One of the things I've learned most about NASA is test, and failure is not bad. Though there was no failures here, but there was a lot of failures before we got here, because that's how you learn. You test things until maximum, to failure point. So you learn what's working, what's not. So SpaceX had an incredible launch. It was, like I said, picture perfect, beautiful landing. And with that, moves forward for our first operational launch, Crew 1. And that, like I said, it's going to go in November. And the goal of that is full operation. That means those astronauts, there's 4 astronauts, will be up in the International Space Station, or ISS, how we call it, for an entire mission, which is 6 months. So we're looking forward to that. And that really is going to usher in a new era in space exploration, because now we have these commercial vehicles doing these launches, and eventually what you're going to be seeing is SpaceX and eventually Boeing launching not only American astronauts, but on this launch we have an international astronaut. We have JAXA, the Japanese Space Agency. We have an astronaut from Japan, and then we'll have other international agencies also going up there, and then eventually we'll have private astronaut missions. So it really is a really important time in exploration, and very exciting for many people.
And out of the 4, how many are women? I'm curious.
We have 1 woman.
Okay.
Shannon Walker, very exciting, and she'll join Kate Rubins, who will be launching to the International Space Station this week with Russia, with Soyuz, on the Soyuz rocket. So we'll have 2 women at Space Station again, and it'll be really exciting. They'll be very full ISS, very full International Space Station.
That is really exciting. So I have a question from you coming in from Veronica Carbonell, and she's a junior at FIU. She says hello.
Hi.
She is double majoring in international relations and political science, and she's minoring in international communications, and she's super happy to be a part of this conversation. And I believe that she had a question, but I don't see it on here now. So if she wants to type it in again, and I'll get to it in 1 second. But there's a lot of comments coming in, and everyone is just really thrilled that you were able to join us.
Yeah, I will say one of the things I love about this as well is there's so much international relations that goes into this. One of the things about NASA, in many ways, it's a soft power for the United States. What that means is we help, we do a lot of diplomacy with other countries. We're going to be launching what we call the Artemis Accords in the next few days, which is how we are working with other nations in space, on the moon. I've been very fortunate to do bilateral meetings with a lot of these international, these different space agencies. So it's been a lot of fun and good to use all the stuff I learned at FIU in my meetings here.
That's awesome. So let me get to the next question, which is, how does your team handle intergovernmental and political communication? Mm-hmm. And what is the importance of the role of having elected officials participate in NASA events?
Perfect. So I just mentioned the Artemis Accords. We worked very closely with the State Department in those efforts because it is international relations. So a lot of work with the State Department and others, and we work a lot with Congress. We have not only a committee that does the authorization for NASA, we also have the Appropriations Committee. So just a few weeks ago, our administrator spoke at those committees, talks about what we are doing. We released our Artemis Plan, which is a culmination of all the things we've been doing for the last year or so, and presented it to Congress. We also presented them with our economic plan, our economic impact study. So working a lot with Congress, educating on what we're doing. We have an entire different team at NASA that does that work, that connects with our members of Congress, and another team that does just the intergovernmental stuff. And then all together we do strategic communications on how we stay linked, how we stay connected, to make sure the message is consistent, that we are providing those different audiences the information that they need.
Awesome. Okay, we've got another question for you that just came in, and that is, how many astronauts can the ISS have at any given time?
I believe it is 9, and I think that we will be up when we launch Crew 1. We will be at about 9. Yeah.
Wow.
And the ISS is big. It's like the size of a football field.
Really?
That doesn't mean that you can live in all of those compartments, but there's space. There's
no
space.
pun intended, right?
Yeah.
So I encourage everyone to keep sending your questions. These are all really good. There's another one here. This one is from Alexander Sabina. Let's see, a philosophy major. How would someone with a philosophy degree integrate in NASA? Talking about, these atypical backgrounds going into this field.
Yeah. Well, I would say there's always opportunities for all different types of backgrounds. At NASA, you need people that, we have lawyers, we have technicians, we have accountants, we have all these different types of people. And we have a lot of people that work on policy and analytical information that is just trying to understand how, even our international stuff, like trying to understand how different people will understand the data, receive the data. But I think it all depends on what you want to do. So if there's a philosophy major that wants to work at NASA, I'm sure there is an opportunity for you there. There's a lot of stuff that we are constantly thinking about, and I'm sure that there's some conversations with some of our scientists that you would love to have.
Absolutely. And I'll say this. So I was a double major when I was an undergraduate. I was an English and philosophy major. And what I have found is that they are two very unusual skill sets in the scientific community that actually you benefit a lot from, because when you're writing these grants, you're basically setting this up as a logical argument, and you're going to employ all of those skills going forward. And then as a communicator, also incredibly helpful in order to present your case, basically. So a very good background to have for sure. So Eric is reminding me here to ask you students to please submit some video questions of yourself. We'd love to see and hear those. So if you can, as we move along to the next question, please go ahead and submit those videos. So Bettina, as an alumna, what are your reflections on seeing so many current FIU students currently working with NASA, and why should others seek these opportunities at the agency?
Yeah, well, it gives me great pride. FIU prepared me for this career that I have. I wouldn't be here without FIU. So working with Eric and Caesar to make sure that we had provide opportunities for FIU students at NASA. There's a lot of things that FIU already does with NASA, but here was one other opportunity to get inspire science communicators and communicators in general to see what was possible in working with at the agency. I'm sure that they could tell you there's so much we are doing any given day. There's no shortage of work. So a lot of pride in expanding the opportunities for FIU students at the agency.
Great. So one of these FIU students has a question for you. What experiments, this one is from Anna Urbina, what experiments have been done on the International Space Station, and who decides on how these projects are managed?
Okay, there is literally hundreds of thousands of things that have happened. In November, we'll be celebrating 20 years of human presence on the International Space Station. So hundreds of thousands of things, and any given day, there's just tons of stuff working on. But things that I'm interested in is anything from experiments on our own astronauts. We just had Christina Cook that was a year in space. It was the woman with the longest time in space, and how space radiation impacts the female body, and that also will inform our information of how we do long-term deep space exploration. So I'm fascinated by that work. There's stuff on food. How do you grow food on the ISS? We have areas within the ISS, it's just for growing food. And if you talk or hear any videos from our astronauts, that's what they get most excited about, is fresh food that they get. But some of the most interesting thing is everything from like growing organs in space. Because of microgravity, we have more opportunities to do things of growing like your own organs. So there's been a lot of work with eyeballs and retinas in building them. So people that have sight issues or blind, you could build basically eyeballs in space that they can then regain their eyesight, and lots of other cool stuff like that. But those are three. If you're interested, definitely on the website, there is a listing of just all the ISS research, and I can kind of see if maybe on the chat I can try to put it in later, or Eric can send it out later. But there's a lot of great stuff that's going on that is going to change how we live here on Earth for the better.
That's incredible. I had no idea about the eyeballs being created out in space. I don't know how many watching this did, but I certainly didn't.
Yeah.
So we have another question from Mariana Ontiveros, and that is, where do you think NASA will go after the Moon, Mars, and spaceflight commercialization? And when might you see that in the future?
Well, we're focused on that. That itself is a lot of work, right?
That's quite a lot right there.
Yeah. We haven't been to the moon in 50 years, and those are all human exploration. So our goal is to get to the moon by 2024. Using the moon as really a step. One of the ways we'll use the moon is a stepping ground to get us to Mars. Learning, the moon is only 3 days away. If something bad happens, we can get back. Going to Mars is almost a 2-year journey. So right now, we're the closest we are to Mars that we're going to be in 15 years. So when we hope to go back to Mars is in about the 2030s is when not go back. We've only sent rovers there. So it'll be the first time humans will go to Mars, and that's somewhere in the 2030s. But it takes time. We have a lot of robotic missions going to other planets, going to other places. We've already had satellites and different NASA ships that, or different NASA, I would say, I'm being a loss of words, technology that has gone to every planet in the solar system in one way or another. So our goal is to continue the exploration, continue that effort. But as far as the human exploration to the moon and Mars, a lot of it will be using commercial sector. How we going to the moon is very different than when we went with the Apollo era. Not only because we have a diverse group of astronauts, but because we're working with private industry in a very different way. Right now, we're in the middle of the selection for our human landing system, which is the vehicle that will actually land on the moon and will carry humans. And there's 3 different companies putting proposals, and it's a very different approach than what we did with Apollo. And it's going to be their vehicles that we are working with them to do, which is different again from Apollo. So lots of everything is, in many ways, we're doing everything in a very different way, very modern, not only with different companies, but international coalition. You know, Japan, I mentioned their space agency is called JAXA. They're working on a rover, a human rover that will transport humans on the moon. And we're working with other companies for other items that will work with our human exploration on the moon and eventually Mars.
Wow. Is there ever a slow day in the office for you?
No. I will say my work-life balance sucks right now. It's so busy, but it is so rewarding. So rewarding.
We're all trying to figure that one out. All right. So Veronica Carbonell submitted her question, and she wanted to, touching upon the SpaceX and Boeing and NASA's involvement, how it's contributed to exciting and engaging the American public, especially the ones who aren't. How is it contributing to the ones that aren't especially interested in STEM?
It just puts it in the middle of the public conversation, right? So one of the things at NASA, what we try to do is find what people are talking about and see how we can inject NASA into that conversation. There's no doubt that people like Elon Musk and SpaceX have become more relevant in pop culture, so it brings more attention to what we're doing in space, and that's been helpful. But we're seeing a space renaissance in many ways. You have all these TV shows that are talking about space, and NASA does a lot of work with Hollywood. In fact, about a year ago, I was in LA talking to producers and an artist on what NASA is doing and how that can inspire them to do projects. We did this several years ago. We've done this several times in the past, and movies like The Martian came out of those kind of projects. So we work a lot with Hollywood and with artists and celebrities to continue to inspire people, and hoping that sparks something in other people and gets them excited at space.
Let me ask you something. When you work with these Hollywood companies and the movies come out, do you see an uptick in your own, in the social media at NASA? Like, is there that engagement? Because as you mentioned before, there's this idea that by going mainstream, you're somehow, dumbing down the science, which on the contrary, you're getting people really excited about it. I'm just seeing if you're seeing like a direct uptick in the sort of social media engagement that you get after these projects are completed and out.
Yeah, I definitely there is an increase. Depending on the project. Like we worked with movies like Ad Astra. We worked, of course, with Hidden Figures. We worked directly on them. We've done a lot of things with that. We continue to do things with not only the families of the Hidden Figures, but the author of the book. We just did an event with her not too long ago. So there's definitely an uptick. And, I get questioned a lot of how do you measure success? Like what do you want to see in the future? And I will say the thing that gives me the most happiness is walking randomly, and well, now with COVID, not so much, but when you're walking in a public area and seeing people with NASA shirts, seeing kids with NASA shirts, NASA hats, that they may not know everything that we're doing, but they know that it is cool enough that they want to put it on themselves.
Absolutely. I've seen the shirts. I don't know if I'm allowed to plug stores, but I've just seen a bunch of the shirts recently, and I grabbed some for my girls. And it's become a part of pop culture. And as you said, even if it's not full awareness of everything that you guys are doing, it's just knowing that what you're doing is cool and piquing that interest.
Right. And absolutely. And we do work with a lot of companies. Like we work with, we work with Target, and we worked with Louis Vuitton. We worked with all these different
Target.
Yeah.
That's where I picked it up.
But we work with them because we know that, all these different audiences, all these different types of people, inspiring them and get them excited. And with DM2, which I mentioned, our launch with SpaceX up to the International Space Station, we brought back the worm, which is that red logo. We call the meatball. That's what we call the meatball. That's the terminology, because it looks circle like a meatball. And then we have the worm, which is that red continuous, it spells NASA. And we've seen people excited and interested and wearing our brand and learning more about it. So even if they just learn about one project, that is, oh, look, there it is. There's the worm.
Cool. There it is.
That is a win for us. And again, using anything we can. When we had about a year ago, it was the first all-female spacewalk with Christina Cook and Jessica Meir. We did a lot of media about that. We did everything possible, and it was a great woman empowerment moment. And then we really used social media to its advantage, to our most, took advantage of it as much as possible to promote those stories, to showcase how people were inspired. And then we saw an uptick in our users. And I would say after the SpaceX launch, I think that, I forget exactly the amount, but we had 10 million people watching the coverage live on nasa.gov, which is pretty impressive. Wow. And we had millions of people join our Twitter account, our YouTube account. So not only with celebrities do we see an increase, but also just operational missions, we see a lot more increase in people interested in it.
Fantastic. So one other question here, and I think we're probably going to need to wrap up soon, but this one is from Ian Lee. How does NASA messaging change from administration to administration in the White House? In other words, what would we in the public notice in the messaging that might have been different prior to the current administration?
Sure. Well, I would say under the Trump administration, we've had more support for NASA, I would say, than since JFK. This administration, with what they signed with the space policy directives 1, 2, and 3, have been very supportive, and they launched the Moon to Mars effort. Before that, during the Obama administration, he did launch the Commercial Crew Program. They canceled the Space Shuttle program, launched the Commercial Crew Program, and focused on that. But there wasn't a focus on Moon or Mars. Their focus was an asteroid redirect program and the Commercial Crew Program. So under the Trump administration, we launched the Moon and Mars program, launched this initiative to go to the moon. We sped it up to 2024. And it's really invigorated not only the United States, but this international coalition. We have Canada, we have Australia, we have the European Space Agency, ESA, which represents dozens of countries, all have joined in, and Japan have all joined in this effort to go to the moon. And we've seen increased budgets, even for our earth science research. We've had additional funding. So in some ways, NASA has been trying to go back to going to the moon since its inception, right? That's one of the reasons. So in some ways, it's been somewhat constant, but depending on the president, there is a different focus that they give. But we're always doing science, we're always doing exploration. And one of the things that our administrator, Jim Bridenstine, has really tried to do is try to make sure that NASA stays apolitical. We have strong bipartisan support. We've done events with members of Congress of all walks of life. We do a lot of things with the Vice President Pence. He's the chairman of the National Space Council. We've also done events with Nancy Pelosi. We've done events with members of Congress who are supportive of space, and because of that, NASA has strong bipartisan support, strong budgets, and it requires both Republicans and Democrats to do that. And hoping by doing that reduces the changes from administration to administration. So one of the things that the only way that NASA can really be successful is to not be impacted so much by political winds, for us to have a plan, because space takes time. We talked about 2024 for the moon. We talked about 2030s for Mars. That needs focus, it needs funding, and needs bipartisan support for it to be a long term. So that's been our big goal under the Jim Bridenstine administration, our NASA administrator, to make sure that we have that strong support, that we continue this mission and continue the progress that we've done, not only by building support in the United States, but internationally as well.
I love that. Science should very much stay free from politics. And it's such an exciting, it's so exciting to hear everything that you all are doing. And I can't wait until this is accessible, as you said, to the public, where, you know, one day my little girl dream of going to the moon, or into space, I should say, is realized. I think, well, do we have time for one more question, Eric? You can just nod. Yes, okay. This one is from Melissa Mercado Rogers, and that's extracting lunar minerals. Why is it a good idea?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Extracting lunar minerals.
Oh,
and why is that a good idea?
Well, one of the things that we're doing that you probably heard is more learning of what we can and can't do to the moon. So the regolith, that covers the moon, finding out with the Outer Space Treaty and some other efforts, what minerals are there. We know that there's water ice on the moon. If we can extract that water ice, we can have longer missions in deep space. That could be, water's H2O. It could be water to drink, hydrogen, and to fuel our rockets, so we can go deeper in space. And the gravity on the moon is a lot easier than here on Earth. So I'm sure that there's one day that we would love to have the technology that we can launch from the moon to other planets, and a lot more opportunities. So we just don't know everything that's up there. You know, just recently we opened moon samples from the Apollo era. They saved it from then because we figured that in the future we'd have much better technology, and we're still learning more and more about the moon. But if you remember, when we landed on the moon back during the Apollo era, it was all in the center, right? We didn't travel to a lot of different places on the moon. So one of the things we want to do with the Artemis program, which is our modern program to go to space, to go to the moon, it's named Artemis, who is the twin sister of Apollo, the Greek goddess of the moon. It is to try to go to the South Pole of the moon. What we know about the South Pole is that there's a lot of water there. We've never been there. There's a lot of opportunities. Other countries have also expressed their interest in going to the South Pole of the moon because of the potential for different minerals that is there. So there's so much that we don't know. And we're hoping that with the Artemis program, we'll do a lot more science, do a lot more exploration, and learn not only about the moon, but know more about our own planet.
Well, I think that is a perfect spot to end our conversation, because I'm all about exploration. The thought that we have all this information at our fingertips, I think sometimes people tend to believe we have all the answers. You know, we know everything that's out there. And the fact that there is so much potential for discovery, and how that requires that curiosity, that insatiable curiosity that obviously you have, and that passion to share it with others. This has been really inspiring, and I think that all of the students that joined us today will agree that it's inspiring to think that every one of them has the potential to go out there and explore and make a discovery. And if they're interested in science communication, inspire others to do the same, which is, I believe, equally important. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm delighted to meet you, and I hope we stay in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina. Thanks, Dr. Mayor. We do have a few students on the call who are either interns or fellows at NASA currently. So we're gonna use the last 10 minutes for them to be able to introduce themselves and what they're working on. Dr. Mayor, since you bring up your own exploration background, could you get us started just with a 30-second or minute discussion of what your role here at FIU is, and so everyone's aware of that?
Oh, absolutely. So my background, as I mentioned earlier, I have a PhD in anthropology, and I was researching rare and elusive primates that not only had they never been studied, some of them had never even been photographed before. Like, for example, two of the species that I studied in Madagascar. And I was doing all of this research, and again, not really knowing how to convey the importance of protecting these wild places and animals to people. And it was through science communication and having a platform with National Geographic that I realized how very, very important it was, and how it really serves a way to inspire others. And so I came to FIU now with this background as the director of exploration and science communications, because I wanted to help other scientists learn how to more effectively tell their stories. And I've had the pleasure of coming out to FIU DC and working with some of the interns there, and I'm doing work with graduate students and undergrads very soon at FIU in Miami. But the idea is to take what I've learned as a storyteller with National Geographic, because I do think that telling these stories, we all have a very unique story to tell, and by personalizing it, by sharing what your findings are through great anecdotes and spectacular visuals, really is an effective way of engaging general audiences and grantors and politicians to really care about what you're doing and why it's important. And that's ultimately when you get the support that you need. So that's my mission at FIU, is to really develop a strong communications program in science and storytelling.
Thank you for that. So I'm excited that we have students on both the science and communication side of things. I would like to turn it over for a minute or two to Marisol Roman, who is one of the fellows on the STEM side of things at NASA. We'd love to hear a little about what you're working on.
Hi, my name is Marisol Roman. Thank you for having me here. I'm currently 21. I'm doing my PhD in electrical engineering. This is my first semester of the PhD, and as Eric already said, I'm a NASA fellow. And my research is focused on basically improving an antenna that already exists, which transmits simultaneously and receives them at the same time, in order to improve the communications for the NASA missions. So do you want me to get into more details about the project itself, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'd love to know, and I guess feel free. And remember, the theme science communication. So, to the extent for our non-science individuals like me, the impact this would have on us in a positive way, perhaps.
Okay, so just for a brief introduction of why we're working on the antenna, on improving this antenna for NASA communications, it's because the NASA, for their missions, they communicate with most of the systems are either time duplex or frequency division duplex. So that means it takes more resources than it should to communicate. And the spectrum that they use to communicate, it's already digested. So in order to decide interference, we can use the system that does this transmission and the receiving at the same time, in order to improve in general communications, and it's more efficient, so, which will help with everything in general in the future when it's working. So yeah, that's I don't know if you guys can hear me, because everything's frozen in my computer.
Yeah, mine are loud, but we heard everything you had to say, and I'm glad that Bettina is able to know about that great project that our FIU student is working on. Thank you for sharing that, Marisol. And we also have 3 interns working directly for Bettina's communications operation. We'd love for them to be able to share a brief thing about what they're doing. And I'm going to go to Lazaro first for having the most NASA branded background after Bettina herself.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate for our moderator and everyone tuning in for taking the time. For those who don't know me, my name is Lázaro Bosch. I'm a senior here at Florida International University studying digital media and communications. I have many thanks. I want to start off by saying thanks to Eric and Carlos and the FIU and DC team for not only hosting this webinar, but for the financial support that they offer first generation college students such as myself. I would not be speaking to you as a NASA intern if it weren't for that support. And I also want to thank my new NASA family, my cohort that's here in this call, Bettina, Katie Summerlin, and the entire HQ OCOM team. They've been wonderful mentors and they have welcomed me to their ideal NASA family. As an intern, I'll be assisting the agency in their communication of Katie and Bettina's team, and I've expressed many interests that they've been able to guide me on the right path when it comes to immersive media and digital multimedia on how we can engage this NASA, our general audience and our science community on on many of our missions. But one mission that that I specifically have a lot of interest in is in Artemis. Artemis, as we heard from Bettina, is the twin sister of Apollo, and it will be the first time that we land a woman and the next man by 2024 on the moon. And COVID, even though we start off the decade rough, these launches has been a really positive impact for, I think, the international community. And as an iconic quote from JFK, we choose to go to the moon in this decade, among other things, not because it is easy, but because we can and because it is difficult. And I think Artemis is what progresses our grandparents' generation, and it honestly brings a lot of emphasis on my upbringing, hearing my grandparents' story, and the impact that as immigrants, them seeing the Apollo missions and how it impacted them. We're not only building on the Apollo mission and my grandparents' mission in the 1960s that JFK had mentioned in that quote at Rice University, but I think it inspires the next generation in this new era of exploration. And here at the university and at NASA, we're celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, and I think as first generation and as a Hispanic, I think it's a blessing to be part of this internship and to be part of this Artemis generation that as a FIU member of community on this call, Bettina, myself, we are now having a footprint beyond the Earth's atmosphere and spreading our FIU legacy strong. And if you want to get involved, I highly recommend to check out the NASA internship site, apply for students, my friends. And I also love to see, and I speak with this on behalf of the team, we love seeing everyone wear their NASA branding and seeing that engagement, people being informed, and as we've all said, this is an election year, and I think it's very important that when we hit the polls, we always have in mind who supports NASA and this long mission that we have ahead of us in the years to come. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
The chat is going wild with people who are loving your setup and enthusiasm. This is a great example of FIU interns. I would have never, if you showed up on my television kind of announcing that next launch, I would never know you were an intern, and it was awesome.
Thank you
I'm
so much,
impressed
everyone.
with Lázaro right now, like super impressed with Lázaro. Good job.
Yeah, I was thinking rock star the entire time. Great job.
Thank you, everybody.
Bettina, if you ever end up in charge of the entire agency, maybe Lazaro's your communications associate administrator. Not to give the other two interns something hard to live up to by putting Lázaro first. Alex, can you introduce yourself a little?
Sure, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Lazaro, I think we found our successor for at least staying at NASA in the communications department. That's a very tough call for me, actually. Anyways, my name is Alex Martinez Rivera. I have to give thanks also to Eric, Carlos, Travis, and everybody at FIUDC for giving us the opportunity to get into the NASA internship and to expand our horizons. I'm actually in my senior year also. I'm studying international relations, minoring in logistics and supply chain management. I echo most of the words of Lazaro, basically, in the sense of space policy and w- basically what we have done, basically, and what we're doing. It is a wonderful experience being with Bettina, Kate, uh, Katie Summerlin, and basically it is a dream of mine, actually, since I was practically a little kid, and you could actually see it on my on my corner of meeting rooms, basically, since basically since my time I was back in Puerto Rico when I was 8, 9 years ago, since I was a little kid, basically, and I wanted it to have it like basically like a space theme, but they told me that I couldn't have it, so I decided on um sky blue, basically, but have the space shuttle and also the patches from Mercury all the way to Apollo. So that's one of those things that gets stuck with me and everything. In regards to what is the position regards, basically is supporting the communications theme, communications team. My apologies. Bettina, Katie, and their day-to-day life operations, and basically spreading the word that NASA is returning back to the moon with the Artemis program, 2024, placing the first woman into the moon and the next man into the moon also, with international consortium partnership, which is one of those great things that we have successfully done with International Space Station, and now we are bringing also the private enterprise into the moon. So with that, I'm going to leave that with Nico to finish up and to close out our the meeting. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Well, it's 12 o'clock, so I'll keep it brief. Thank you, Eric, for inviting us to this webinar here. Thank you, Mireya, for hosting us in this great discussion. And obviously, Bettina, tremendous knowledge, and clearly she's a workhorse for NASA. But just very quickly about myself, I'm well acquainted with FIU. I graduated in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in political science. I'm in my second year of my graduate degree in globalization and security with global affairs, excuse me, the MAGA program. But just the internship in general for me, I'm classified technically as the strategic and integration and media outreach intern. A little bit of a mouthful there, but it's fun. It's extremely fun. We've learned a lot about NASA. I mean, just talking about NASA here, the reason why we're on this call is because NASA is so exciting. I think it's so cool that we can talk about an agency, a US agency, and say, it's just cool. That's just exciting. I mean, there's not many opportunities. You know, you talk about the State Department or, you know, any kind of military branch, like, yeah, it's cool, but we're talking about NASA, who's developed Nike shoes, or at least the technology for Nike shoes, developing these tissues, you know, for the body, for the retinas, for immaculate degeneration, all these kinds of things. It's incredible. Working on modifying human DNA to withstand the radiation in space through other species of micro tardigrades or whatever the name is. I mean, these things are incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And just to think that Apple headphones here that are wireless, we couldn't do that unless it was for NASA. And so NASA has played such a huge role in all of our lives that we don't even realize. And so as an intern, and as Alex and Lazaro has pointed to, like our responsibility as interns is to promote these things and to target these audiences and remind people of why NASA is so important. There's a lot of logistical things that fall underneath that as well. As I mentioned, strategic and integration planning and media outreach. There's a lot of nit and gritty type stuff. And so I've been tasked with priority processes, just reprioritizing the level of different events. And if you see the SharePoint for the Office of Communications, it's absolutely ridiculous. You would be like so surprised by how many events there are that NASA hosts. It's absolutely incredible. And a person does not have that much time in the day to attend all these events. So they're heavy tasks, but they're awesome. Another one is just working with the internal communications matrix. And this is very simple in that this is a place where anyone who works for NASA in the OCOM division, they can go, they can say, all right, if I'm working with this individual or this team, I have a place where I can subscribe to either an email or a meeting, some kind of Teams meeting to be a part of whatever it is that's going on. So those are a few things I'm working on. And as a cohort of these interns, as Bettina spoke about, we're really trying to target various audiences that aren't necessarily targeted already. Obviously, Bettina spoke about Congress, stakeholders and the media. Those are general, I guess you can say, target audiences, but we're kind of tasked with, okay, well, let's think outside of the box. Who can we target that is going to be fascinated with NASA? They just need to hear about it. And so I think NASA is totally awesome. I think it's encouraging that everyone here is on the call, because we already understand that NASA is totally awesome. But it's very encouraging. And thank you, Bettina. Thank you, Eric, for the opportunity to be here and also to be a part of the team there at NASA, because it's just incredible to play such a small role. And I won't even say such a small role, but a small role in the overall mission of NASA. I think the curiosity, the passion for exploration that NASA promotes is absolutely incredible. And I think we need to know more about that as people of the world, just working with commercialized space industries and just internationally working with other astronauts. It's incredible. But I've said a lot. Thank you for coming to my quick TED Talk. And I hope to connect with many of you soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Nico. Appreciated the other great space background from Alex. Appreciated Nico's State Department versus NASA level of coolness comparison. If we ever get our alumni running comms at State Department to do one of these, we will keep you far away from that conversation. To close things out here, I am being paid to make sure this question gets asked. FIUC's leader has chatted in the chat for Bettina. He thought that as an expert in intergalactic communication, she might have an opinion on which institution is the finest institution in the universe. Bettina, you can answer that how you please or not.
Aside from NASA, FIU is awesome. And like I said, I wouldn't be where I am without FIU. The opportunity, just the internship program that allowed me to get to DC and start this incredible career, I will always be forever grateful. And if demonstrated by these incredible interns, my heart was full with their excitement and their interest in what we were doing. And a lot of it, they were already like NASA, but learning what we did clearly got them more excited. So just imagine what else we could do with the rest of the world of getting them to do it. And I really appreciate all the plugs for the Artemis program, getting people interested in this incredible opportunity, and to land the first woman and next man on the moon by 2024, and getting people excited. If you want more information, you can go on the NASA website. There's a newsletter. You can get weekly information. You can also join our social media accounts, Twitter and Instagram. We're all of them, Facebook, and get more information and get involved. There's a lot of fun stuff we're doing, like a moon kit competition right now. And the opportunities are endless, and we're excited to have so many people along for this ride.
Fantastic. This has been a great hour and change. Dr. Mireya Mayor, thanks for moderating. Bettina, thank you so much for being here on a federal holiday, no less, and for supporting and mentoring our interns. And thank you to everyone who joined and asked a question. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you both. Thank you, Mireya. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.